I've spoken to a lot of families in Gaza City over the last few weeks who have just fled this besieged north area. And what is noticeable actually is that these families are female. I asked them, where are your relatives? Where are your family? Tell me what's happened. And they tell me that the male relatives, the husbands, the brothers, the sons, the fathers, they were detained or they were shot. That's the answer that they have. There's no safety. I met an 80-year-old woman in a wheelchair. She said her young male relatives were pushing her and they were shot and killed in front of her. And she was left there stranded, waiting to be saved. Another family had to continue pushing her out of the area. People hear about this. People know about these experiences. People talk to each other. There's no safety. Where do they want people to move when there's no safety? Families are just trying to stay together and stay alive. There's no reason for them to move and be forcibly displaced for the 14th, 15th, 16th time to another area just to die there. They don't want to do that. They want to stay where they are. They want to stay with their families, and they just want to try and stay alive.
That's another point a lot of times people don't think about, is the fact is that it is unstable. There is no stability to be able to stay where you are. And, once you go to a new area, you have to look for where to get food, where to get water, where is safe. Imagine the PTSD that people are going through. Imagine the amount of anxiety. Those of you who have to deal with anxiety on a day-to-day basis, can you imagine that what the people are going through just to be able to survive? As many of you know, this past Sunday, over the weekend, I was in the hospital. Really not necessarily by choice. It was really out of duress because, of course, as you guys know, I'm on kidney dialysis. And so my kidney dialysis access was clotted. So therefore, I had to have it done in hospital versus my preferred method of having it done outpatient. With that being said, I gave into a cycle which I am pretty much annoyed by, heightened potassium levels and then having to lower the potassium before you can actually have a procedure done. This is part and parcel of the life of a dialysis patient. But what I went through, even though it was annoying, it wasn't life-threatening because of outside forces. So I would like to get into this because this is absolutely necessary to talk about. Because as somebody that's disabled, as somebody that has went through a lot of medical procedures, necessary medical procedures, I couldn't dream of having to endure a genocide outside of my hospital window while trying to get healthy or maintain my life. But yet some Palestinians had to go through that. Let me share this, what happened at a North Gaza hospital. And then, of course, I will be pausing at intervals to discuss some points. But shout out to Case Study QB for this. Thank you very much for this heavy topic. Let's get into it.
What you're looking at here are windows inside the Kamal Adwan Hospital in northern Gaza. They are covered with sandbags for the fear of snipers. According to the hospital's director, this is the only hospital providing any humanitarian services in the north. And yet this is the scene of devastation that they are facing each and every day. Over the past 24 hours, health officials have reported intense Israeli attacks on the hospital, including on the ICU maternity ward and the neonatal unit. Because the hospital has been hit repeatedly, this video from Tuesday is one of the latest our team was able to verify. Kamal Adwan, along with the entirety of northern Gaza, have been under total Israeli siege for more than 70 days now, since early October. but the situation is still dire for everyone throughout the besieged strip. Here are scenes from the aftermath of an Israeli airstrike on a house in Deir el-Balah earlier today. Again, this is in central Gaza. Among the 11 people killed were Dr. Nasser, who used to work at Al-Shifa Hospital, his wife, and Dr. Ahmed al-Dahiri, university professor, his wife, and 3 children. The homeowner was also killed, along with his wife and kids.
First off, I would like to talk about this because I think it's really important to go into, because a lot of times we focus on the patients, right? Which, of course, that's the first thing you think about. But we don't talk about the medical personnel, the doctors, the nurses, the techs, the people who keep the hospital clean, the people who transport the patients, right? We don't talk about them. We don't talk about the risks that some of these doctors, literally could move themselves out of Gaza. They could try to go to another part of Palestine, or they could try to leave and get refugee status. But many of them stay. Why? Because they love their people. Because they want to be there for them. Let's say you have a doctor and you have a particular case, and then your doctor is murdered by the IOF. Now, it's not just a circumstance of, oh my God, they got my doctor. But also, just from a logistics standpoint, now you have to get a new doctor, which has to familiarize themselves with your case and familiarize themselves with your condition in order to be able to treat you. Some of these doctors may be specialists that are more rare in these areas. Some of these doctors could be nephrologists. They could be cardiologists. They could be anesthesiologists. They could be gastrointestinal doctors. They could be neurologists. They could be a whole host of different type of specialized medicine. They could be different surgeons. They could be surgeons that are focused mostly on your limbs, right? They could be ear, nose, and throat doctors. You never know. They could just be general practitioner or internal medicine. You never know. But the fact is that they're losing specialists, they're losing general practitioners, they're losing nurses, they're losing techs. If you're a nurse, can you imagine what it's like to not have a tech or a nursing assistant to assist you with helping patients? If you're a doctor, can you imagine what it's like to not have a nurse to help you, to assist you with helping patients? No surgical assistance. This is what's going on there. I want the weight of this to be as heavy as possible for us to realize that, yes, even though we've been talking about what's been going on for the last 14 months, it doesn't make it any less heavy. Let's continue.
For more than 400 days, these scenes have become the norm. Whole families are being killed. Hospitals, schools that are being targeted, barely functioning, all of them destroyed, no ceasefire or end in sight. Earlier, I spoke with Louise Waterridge, digital communication and social media officer at UNRWA, about these ongoing attacks and more. And she was speaking to us from central Gaza. Louise, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've seen these reports about the intense Israeli attacks on Kamal Adwan Hospital this weekend in North Gaza. We know that you're in central Gaza, but what have you heard? What can you tell us about the attacks on this hospital as of this hour?
It's been nearly 80 days that the north part of the Gaza Strip has been under this very strict siege and continued military operations. What we're hearing the last 24 hours is it just keeps intensifying. Every single day we hear reports from medical staff who are still there trying to provide whatever care and treatment they can to people who are trapped in these areas, who are trying to find shelter in these areas. We have very limited access. We've continued to have repeated denial of the United Nations to these areas. And it's just unimaginable. It really is unimaginable, the suffering and pain that people are being put through in these areas, and the continued really, really intense operations around the hospital and around the residential areas where people are just trying to find some kind of safety.
We know
So let's get into this right here, because what's going on right now is the targeting of hospitals is a war crime. And no matter what you say, you can make excuses about Hamas all you want. They're targeting hospitals. Israel is targeting hospitals. How many hospitals were targeted by Hamas within Israel? Day after day after day, the IOF does actions that make Palestinian resistance seem like the lesser evil. Is the resistance even an evil? Looking at what the IOF is doing. That's the question that I ask. Because you literally have hospitals that are being targeted. My goodness.
We know these attacks have continued all throughout the besieged Gaza Strip. Just last week, at least 36 people were killed in an Israeli strike on the Nusayrat refugee camp where you are now located. Just in the past 24 hours, you've had 32 Palestinians that have been killed throughout the Strip, according to the health ministry there. How often are you seeing strikes? Is there any warning from Israeli forces to you and your team when they do actually carry out attacks or not?
As I'm speaking to you now, there are strikes going on all around me. I hear there's been reports of a strike in Mawasi. This is supposed to be the humanitarian zone. This is supposed to be a designated safe area for families to shelter. It's been hit in a strike once again, just in the last half an hour or so. And there's been some very heavy and severe bombings. It shakes the entire building. It shakes the floor. And it's been relentless. The last couple of nights, it's been all through the night. I saw my colleagues and friends today. People are exhausted. There's no warning. It's Navy fire. It's drones. It's strikes. It is just relentless. And it's really, it just has such a psychological effect on people that you can't sleep. You can't plan anything. You can't plan movement. If you try and go and get some flour or some food or anything like this, you can be caught out in any kind of attack or strike. And this has been going on 14 months. This isn't a new situation. It's just relentless.
Let me ask you more about the north for a moment, because the UN has said that it has been largely blocked from getting aid into northern Gaza for the last 2 months since the area first came under Israelis' total siege. There are some 75,000 people who are still in the north. Just tell us, what is actually stopping the aid from getting through? And more importantly, what are you hearing about how those 75,000 people there are literally surviving day in and day out?
From what we hear and what we see, anywhere in this besieged north area is flattened. It's not habitable anymore. It's completely decimated. We know areas around the Gaza Strip, around Gaza City, for example, are resembling this. Khan Yunis resembles this. These areas, they were once cities that are absolutely flattened. And now this is what Jabalia looks like. Now this is what Beit Hanun looks like. It's unrecognizable. And we continue to be denied access. And when I say that, I mean, WFP tweeted yesterday, 97% of their requests have been denied. 97%.
What reason does the Israeli
do what we can.
What reason does the Israeli military give you when they are denying you access to these areas?
Sometimes no reason, sometimes military operations. It depends. It really depends on the mission. It depends on the day. Sometimes there's no information. So it's very difficult for us to plan or to know why or which areas. We've had some missions where certain areas we're not allowed to go, but those areas will be where the hospitals are or the people are. Sometimes we're denied even taking food or medical supplies in the convoys. There have been, at the beginning of last month, medical evacuations, but then they weren't allowed to take medical supplies with them. They weren't allowed to take food with them. They weren't allowed to take water with them. It's just inhumane. It's absolutely inhumane.
So let me go back to this part here, and I'll go back to that. I want to show you guys, this is basically the inside of the hospital, right? Of course, you have the beds, you have where the nurses' station is, right? But can you imagine being in a hospital and going through this in a war zone? I'm feeling right now for all the patients that are there, because I was literally there at the same time that these sieges are happening. Imagine being a dialysis patient at these hospitals, going through what they're going through. Not sure whether you're going to be able to get your treatment. And do you know how complex dialysis is? Making sure that you have a water filtration system, making sure that you have all the necessary, I don't want to say chemicals, but necessary substances to be able to filter the blood properly and to be able to dialyze people. Can you imagine not being able to do that properly? And then that person has to, in order to maintain them, you have to dialyze them 2 to 3 times a week. But what if you can only get to the dialysis center? Or what if they only have the capacity to dialyze you once a week? So then you're feeling that fluid build up. It's hard to breathe. You got to be extremely careful how much you can drink. It could be water, milk, juice. It doesn't matter, right? Even though water is very hard to come by. And so breathing may be a little labored, may have shortness of breath before dialysis. No possibility of ever getting a kidney transplant because, well, hospitals are being destroyed. And so while you may not be able to get the adequate dialysis, you could possibly die over an extended period of time because your dialysis is not being managed properly. So I just wanted to emphasize that there from a person's perspective who is, who is also a patient. Let's continue. Oh, sorry. I had muted.
People there wanted to leave, or if they wanted to evacuate the hospital, is Israel even giving them safe passage to get to other parts of Gaza where it may be safer? I know no part of Gaza is safe, but relatively speaking to what we're seeing right now in the north, would they be given evacuation passageways to get to other areas from Kamal Adwan Hospital in the north?
I've spoken to a lot of families in Gaza City over the last few weeks who have just fled this besieged north area. And what is noticeable actually is that these families are female. I asked them, you know, where are your relatives? Where are your family? Tell me what's happened. And they tell me that the male relatives, the husbands, the brothers, the sons, the fathers, they were detained or they were shot. That's the answer that they have. There's no safety. I met an 80-year-old woman in a wheelchair. She said her young male relatives were pushing her and they were shot and killed in front of her. And she was left there stranded, waiting to be saved. Another family had to continue pushing her out of the area. People hear about this. People know about these experiences. People talk to each other. There's no safety. Where do they want people to move when there's no safety? Families are just trying to stay together and stay alive. There's no reason for them to move and be forcibly displaced for the 14th, 15th, 16th time to another area just to die there. They don't want to do that. They want to stay where they are. They want to stay with their families, and they just want to try and stay alive.
That's another point. A lot of times people don't think about is the fact is that it is unstable. There is no stability to be able to stay where you are. And, you know, once you go to a new area, you have to look for where to get food, where to get water, where is safe. Imagine the PTSD that people are going through. Imagine the amount of anxiety. Those of you who have to deal with anxiety on a day-to-day basis, can you imagine that what the people are going through just to be able to survive? The trauma, just the amount of trauma.
We are more than 400 days into what leading human rights organizations are now calling a genocide. What is your message to the international community of either health officials, human rights activists, the politicians, the diplomats that continue to see these horrific scenes, continue to see these atrocities, and completely unable to rein Israel in or to end this war as the media coverage of Gaza continues to dwindle?
It's unforgivable. I've been here since the Rafah incursion. It was unforgivable then, it's unforgivable now. We're seeing people, they're helpless. My colleague was down in Rafah when the strikes, there was a child who was burning alive, headless, and it went viral, and all eyes were on Rafah, we were told. The same thing is happening now. The same thing is happening today in the besieged north. It's no doubt happening in Nusayrat. It's probably happening in Mawasi while I'm speaking to you. Every day. How is this happening? It's been 14 months. It's absolutely unforgivable that nothing is being done. The journalists on the ground are risking life and limb on a daily basis to show the world what is happening. We know what is happening. We're telling you what is happening. It's not okay. It's not okay that this inaction continues. It needs to stop. There has to be a ceasefire. It is the only hope now.
All right, Luis Wateridge.
And yet, Israel has been brought to heel on this. There's been some reports that have come out as of recently that I want to share. This is from CAIR, the Council of American Islamic Relations. This is one of their headlines, and I think this is indicative of what carnage that Israel is doing. Says CAIR condemns international apathy in the face of genocide as babies freeze to death in Gaza. Says the Council on American and Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, today condemned the international apathy in the face of genocide that resulted in the freezing deaths of babies in Gaza. At least 4 Palestinian babies have died of hypothermia and lack of access to warmth while living in tents. CAIR says these babies froze to death because of international apathy in the face of the genocide being carried out by far-right Israeli government, with the active complicity of the Biden administration, the international and systemic denial of humanitarian aid, and the resulting suffering, starvation, and deaths, and the direct result of the genocidal Israeli government's brutal actions and the support for those crimes against humanity by the Biden administration. First of all, we need to continue to lay in that Biden is still president. He's still president for another 25 days. He's a lame duck president. Could enforce a ceasefire right now. He could enforce, a arms embargo right now. And yet, he chooses not to. So even when it's not politically, even when it's no harm to him politically, he still does not do the right thing. This tells you everything you need to know about who Joe Biden is. Even when it will not harm him politically, he still allows this carnage to happen. Says earlier today, CARE called on U.S. media outlets and journalists to condemn Israel's latest killings and attacks on journalists in Gaza and the West Bank. Yesterday, CARE condemned comments by the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Jacob Lew, dismissing the report by U.S.-backed agency on Israel's campaign to force starvation in northern Gaza by stating that the ethnic cleansing of the area was largely completed. Earlier this week, CARE reiterated its call for American Medical Association to condemn Israel's attacks on medical facilities in Gaza as 3 hospitals in devastated northern Gaza are under siege or face forced evacuation. This is something else that I want to talk about because I have a comrade that is a physician. And the silence from the medical community, from the American Medical Association, from many different medical associations across this country, as Israel commits atrocities against innocent Palestinians all over. Their silence is deafening. For the doctors, whether they be general practitioners, specialists, nurses, techs, nursing assistants, nurse practitioners, physician's assistants, any of you, your silence in this is complicity. You're supposed to do no harm. And yet you're allowing your silence to do exactly the opposite. To allow, to permit, to condone the harm that's being done within Gaza, within these hospitals. Shame on you. Shame on you. Israel has slaughtered more than 45,000 people in Gaza, mostly women and children. CARE's mission is to protect the civil rights, enhance understanding of Islam, promote justice, and empower American Muslims. And so that's basically what it says. But yes, babies are freezing to death. Are you going to make a excuse for that? Are you going to blame the resistance for that? Because it's not the resistance that's causing them to freeze. Because they have to live in tents. Remember, we're in the Northern Hemisphere. It's winter. It's cold outside. And this time of year, it gets cold in that part of the world too. And infants are dying. Let me also share this as well. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but I want to make sure I get this. So this is out of Common Dreams. It says, we are being attacked in plain sight. Israeli forces besiege 3 Gaza hospitals. It says it is unacceptable for the world to remain silent and unable to protect the healthcare system. That's from Gaza's health ministry. It says, Israeli forces have encircled and attacked 3 barely functioning hospitals in northern Gaza with growing intensity over the past week, endangering the lives of patients receiving treatment inside the facilities, including premature babies and medical workers. Dr. Hussam Abu Safaya, the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, said in a video statement that over the weekend that the Israeli military had surrounded the facility and bullets had penetrated the intensive care unit, the maternity department, and specialized surgery department. I want to make this abundantly clear. I just want you guys to visualize this. Imagine your loved one giving birth and then they're hit by a bullet as they're giving birth. Could you live with that? You got a baby that is in a nursery after being born and bullets are whizzing by. Did you know that the miscarriage rate jumped 300% in Gaza? Miscarriages jumped 300%. This is why it is so important for us to continue to talk about this. And I know there's a fatigue here in the United States. There's a fatigue, there's a genocide fatigue that's happening right now. I get it. I get it. We're tired of hearing about it. Some people who probably were watching this very stream checked out. But what if it were you going through a genocide? A present genocide, not a slow-moving one like some of us are going through right now, but a more rapid-pacing, immediate genocide. Wouldn't you want other people to continue to keep talking about it? A couple weeks back, we had a young teenage girl who was harmed by IOF's occupation and what they're doing in Gaza. This is a teenage girl that was harmed. And through the tireless work of organizations like Heal Palestine, they were able to bring her from Gaza to here in the United States. And we welcome her here in Orlando. And this is being done in many different cities across the United States. But it's an arduous task in order to be able to get them here in order to get medical care. I ask you, what would have happened if she was in one of those hospitals that was under siege? Let me just share it with you guys, because I actually did a live stream with it. We welcome Hala from Palestine. And this is the moment she arrived here in Orlando. So people are. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it. Yes, Rafea. So I just want to make this abundantly clear. Think about if this young lady was still in Gaza right now in one of these hospitals. Would she have survived? What about the other people, the other young children in Gaza that have lost limbs, been subjected to white phosphorus that is burned down to their bones, from the surface of their skin down to their bones? What if this have happened? And no doubt it's not just babies that are dying from hypothermia, but it's probably also very young children too. But we have to highlight the babies because, well, how else are we going to keep the outrage of genocide going? We have to let people know exactly that some of the youngest victims. I cannot tell you how many times I have seen fetuses taken out of the dead mother's womb and doctors trying to save the fetus. This is heavy, and we cannot stop talking about what Israel is doing. Allah is the exception, not the rule. But the rule should be Palestine should be free. It shouldn't be like this. Even though I was annoyed in the hospital with what I was enduring, that should be, it shouldn't be the norm, but it should be, you know, the worst that somebody in Gaza should have to deal with. It shouldn't have to be this death and destruction outside their hospital window. So I hope this reinvigorates your resolve to keep talking about it. Don't let anybody bully you into being against what the U.S. hegemon is doing, what Israel is doing. Do not let them bully you into doing that. This is deeply important. Our solidarity has to go with people who are in places like Gaza, Jenin, the West Bank, all of Palestine, because what they're going through is absolutely horrendous. Your voice is the answer. Your voice is the solution. Thank you so very much for watching my channel, and I deeply appreciate it from the top and bottom of my heart. If you wish to support the channel further, so I can keep bringing you content that is educational and informative, you can become a patron on patreon.com/Jaybefaunt. You can find that link in the pinned comment or in the description below. No matter what you give, you'll be supporting independent media and education that helps make the world better. Thank you so much. and you can watch more of my content here. Mwah. Forehead kisses, and have a beautiful day.